I welcome this opportunity to comment on the process of the World Summit on Food Security at a moment when the declaration is practically agreed upon. I would like first to commend the diplomats who've been working so hard on this process. I think this work is not always sufficiently appreciated, but it is essential. The global food price crisis has brought us together, and it is essential that we do not lose this momentum within the international community. I attach great importance to three dimensions in particular of the declaration. Firstly, the declaration reaffirms the central role of the right to food in channeling the efforts both towards short-term emergency measures feeding the hungry and towards long-term investment in agriculture and rural development. And I think this reaffirmation of the central character of the right to food is hugely important for three reasons. First of all, it should ensure that the targeting will be improved and that, in particular, the most vulnerable populations will be reached by these efforts. Secondly, it should ensure that accountability will be improved, especially if victims who are left out from support schemes have remedies at their disposal to complain about this exclusion. And thirdly, the right to food is important because it implies that the policies which are developed will have to be participatory, and I'm deeply convinced that you cannot truly help the poor without the poor, and that if we do so, we will have policies which are ill-informed and misguided. A second element of the declaration, which I consider a great achievement, is the support of the member states to the revised Committee on World Food Security within the FAO. I think this new revised Committee on World Food Security should become an inclusive forum in the future to ensure three things. First, better coordination of efforts and therefore an improved global governance of food security. Secondly, collective learning by the exchange and sharing of best practices among states. And thirdly, improved accountability by the adoption by the CFS of a global strategic framework which should guide efforts at national and regional levels in order to achieve long-term food security. I believe that the CFS, as it has been revised, has the potential of becoming an absolutely central actor in the global governance for the full realization of the right to food and could particularly support states in implementing the voluntary guidelines on the right to food unanimously adopted in 2004 by the member states of the FAO. Thirdly, I welcome the emphasis of the declaration on sustainable farming and on resource-saving agriculture. We are 3 weeks ahead of the Copenhagen Conference on Climate Change, and the signal which is given in the declaration is an absolutely important one. Agriculture is presently part of the problem of climate change. It should become in the future part of the solution. We should move away from agriculture conceived as mining and as destroying soils and emitting large amounts of greenhouse gases, and we should move towards more agroecological forms of farming which benefit soils and which will also benefit the poorest farmers working in the most difficult environments. There are, however, other parts of the declaration which I believe may be raising more questions than they provide answers. First of all, and very significantly, the declaration calls upon a timely conclusion of the Doha round of trade negotiations. However, the relationship between trade in agricultural commodities on the one side and food security on the other side is one which is complex and which is often misunderstood. More trade will not alleviate food insecurity if it benefits primarily commodity buyers, retailers, or indeed the largest producers in the countries who export on the global markets. Instead, trade should benefit the small farmers, those who are for the moment forming the majority of the hungry. And this will not happen by accident, it will not happen by chance, it can only happen by design. In many cases in the past, it is these small farmers who have been negatively impacted by trade liberalization. They have not benefited from investments which were disproportionately oriented towards export agriculture. and they have in fact been pushed to the margins as a result of import surges in contexts in which they were not sufficiently protected by the states. And so I believe it is not consistent with the message of improved global governance and with the message of improved coordination at a global level to call for the Doha round of trade negotiations to be completed without first assessing the impact of trade liberalization on food security. And I would call, therefore, on all states to evaluate these impacts before proceeding further. I think we should never forget that more revenues from exports will not necessarily benefit the poorest. They will, in principle, accrue to the most competitive and not those who most need to be supported, smallholders who, for the moment, have been often forgotten from public policies. There is another area in which the declaration may not be going as far as we could have hoped for. The declaration calls for more studies on the issues of agrofuels production and its impact on food security, and it calls for more studies on the impact of speculation on the futures markets of agricultural commodities. I think this is not sufficiently ambitious. Not tackling these issues, which we know have been problems in the past, means that we remain vulnerable to a new food price crisis in the future. And this crisis may happen in 2010, it may happen in 2011, we cannot know for sure. But what is certain is that we must do more to address the structural causes of food insecurity and the structural causes of volatility on the markets of agricultural commodities. Thank you.